Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Live with Renk show. I appreciate you tuning in. Breaking news, first time heard on any media here in the state of Michigan. Many of you may remember a couple weeks ago, around I think March 9th is when I spoke about this, and this was the Planet Fitness and the transgender issue that occurred in here, the great state of Michigan, in Midland, Michigan. Let me give you a quick background on it as I know it, as reported by WMEN out of Midland, Michigan at the time. This was a March 6th article. Planet Fitness drops member after gender identity complaint. And it goes like this. It's a business that sells itself as being non-judgmental, but Planet Fitness has allegedly revoked the membership of a woman for complaining. Yvette Cormier, a member of the Midland location, says she had no idea what that actually meant until a few days ago. Quote, I was stunned and shocked. He looked like a man. He did not look like a woman, she said. And she's talking about a transgender woman who walked into the woman's locker room while she was getting undressed. She says she couldn't believe her eyes. Not knowing why the person was in the locker room, the woman's locker room, she immediately complained to the front desk and eventually to corporate offices. Quote, they told me the same thing, that he was allowed in there because that's the sex he wants to be. End quote. It made national news, especially with all the LGBT issues going around these days. Representatives from Planet Fitness at the time said, quote, Planet Fitness is committed to creating a non-intimidating, welcoming environment for our members. Maybe they should ask Yvette about that before they go make a comment like that. Our gender identity non-discrimination policy states that members and guests may use all gym facilities based on their sincere self-reported gender identity. In expressing her concerns about the policy, the member in question exhibited behavior that club management deemed inappropriate and disruptive to other members, which is a violation of the membership agreement, and as a result, her membership was canceled. At the time I wrote a blog, I asked you ladies, as a woman, would you want to walk into your local gym's locker room and find a man who the gym allowed to be in that locker room? A man who sincerely identified as a woman. Now that you know that she or he sincerely identifies as a woman, does that make a difference? And I found it kind of funny on the Planet Fitness side where they say they don't want to be judgmental, but yet they're judgmental to Yvette Cormier. Those are the facts as I know it. In studio right now, Yvette Cormier has hired an attorney. And the attorney is David Coleman from the Coleman Legal Group, part of the Great Lakes Justice Center. Good morning, David, and thanks a lot for coming on the Live with Renk show.
It's great to be here, Renk.
Well, you heard what I just said. Please feel free to correct if anything was wrong in that. But what is the factual background on this issue as you know it?
Well, I think the essential facts you gave are correct. Our client joined in January, this Planet Fitness, signed a contract. We reviewed that written contract. There's nothing in there that even lists this non-judgmental policy. There's a vague statement about you will apply or comply with all policies of Planet Fitness. But when you go there to use their facilities, as our client did, there's nothing posted saying that transgender people can use the opposite sex bathroom. There's nothing like that at all. The facilities are listed as women's areas, men's areas. And so obviously our client was quite upset when she goes in the women's locker room and here's a man who's biologically in all respects a man. And
if I may interrupt, I'm sorry, but I want to make sure everyone knows this has nothing to do with the man who self-identifies as a woman. And you yourself said that to me, David, when we spoke about this yesterday.
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, we don't agree with what happened here and everything, but that gentleman was simply doing what Planet Fitness allowed him to do. And so, we're not contemplating any lawsuit against that gentleman. We're considering looking at the various ways that a lawsuit can be brought against Planet Fitness for their violations of the law.
Right. So just want to make it clear, this is not we are not being judgmental. It has nothing to do with the, as you said, gentleman who is involved in this.
Right. He can live his life as he chooses to do so.
Right.
I may disagree with it or whatever, but that's not the issue. He can make his own choices. But this has to do with how it impacts women and their safety in a locker room that's designated for women.
When you say in their safety, do you ever feel that in making that statement, it implies that they would be unsafe with people who are truly have a gender identity issue?
Well, again, we can't ascribe motives to everybody, but clearly, well, let me put it this way. There are laws on the books, criminal laws, that were violated by allowing this man, or at least potentially violated, indecent exposure laws, child abuse laws, that make it crimes for men to go into a women's locker room and who could potentially, shower, disrobe, be walking around naked in a women's locker room. That's indecent exposure under Michigan law.
Regardless on if they sincerely believe they're a woman,
doesn't matter,
or vice versa. If they were sincerely a woman who would sincerely believe they're a man. It was interesting talking about the man that I wasn't made aware of until you informed me that he's not a member.
Right. He was a guest. And so that's part of our suit here also, is that Planet Fitness has a member who signed a contract and expects to receive certain benefits and use of the facilities, and she's the one that gets judged and gets discriminated against because of her objection to a man in the women's locker room. I mean, it really turns everything on its head.
So what other factual basis should our listeners know? And again, my guest in studio is David Coleman from the Coleman Legal Group, the female with the female body parts. And I don't say that jokingly. I'm trying to make sure you, as my listeners, understand this, has retained you as their lawyer in their case against Planet Fitness. We spoke about some of the facts as you know it already. Anything more we should know? No signs, no posters.
Right. And it's identified as a women's locker room. My client went out to the front desk to inquire, why is there a man in the women's locker room? And then was told that, well, he self-identifies as a transgender woman, so he's allowed to use whichever facility he wants to use. And then she was told, well, you can just wait outside until he's done. And our client responded, well, how about if he waits outside till I'm done? I mean, this is the women's locker room. So she called the corporate offices for Planet Fitness, got the same remarks, and it all went from there. They say, as a subterfuge, as far as I'm concerned, Planet Fitness, that they did not terminate our client's membership because of her issues over the man in the locker room. It was because she was complaining and disrupting other members at the Planet Fitness, which is flat out not true. All she did was inform other women, hey, be careful, they're letting men in the women's locker room.
Right.
And she says everybody was mortified at that. And we believe they were doing this because Planet Fitness was getting a lot of calls of people upset that was happening. And so they took this action against our client to try to stop the complaints, I think.
Now, it's interesting that you had informed me that during a March 5th, 2015 phone call, the defendants in this case, which would be Planet Fitness. And by the way, this is first breaking here on the Live with Renk show. I appreciate David reaching out to us. He's a listener of mine. And I remember you called in during the time when we talked about it, when you had no idea who Yvette was.
Right.
You weren't being retained by, or you just called in to discuss the issue.
Right.
And then he reached out to me the other day, offering it to me in the Live with Renk show to be the first here in the state of Michigan to break the news on this one. During the March 15th, 2004, March 2nd, March 5th, 2015 phone call, Ms. Cormier was on with corporate, correct?
Yes.
And they gave her an ultimatum.
Yeah, they basically said, I mean, these are my words, but it's basically shut up and stop talking to other people or you're out of here.
Right.
Yeah.
Submit to their policy.
That's right.
which
submit to their violations of the law and their discriminatory actions against our client, or else. That was the ultimatum.
so what does Mrs. Comier, what is she looking to achieve from this lawsuit?
Well, I think a few things. Obviously, first and foremost, is to let people know that these types of laws and what's being proposed have consequences in the real world. That it goes beyond just this case with Planet Fitness. We see this in other states right now, in California, where, you know, somebody that just chooses the gender that they feel like that day can enter into the opposite sex's bathrooms or use facilities. This is happening in schools in certain states that have passed these kinds of laws. We came very close in Michigan to having a law passed just like that that would have allowed this last December, but the legislature did not approve it. So she's concerned with the impact just broadly to society in general, but she's also concerned that Planet Fitness be held accountable. I mean, they are violating the law here, and I'm happy to get into the ways and the issues that we're drafting. We're drafting a complaint right now. We plan on filing it probably by the end of this week or the first of next week. And there's many ways that Planet Fitness has violated the law as it stands right now. And so they need to be held accountable.
Well, in my concern, and I have talked about this on the Live with Renk show before, my concern about what was going on in California with schools especially is these men or women who truly identify as the opposite sex and truly live their lives 100% as that in that manner.
Mhm.
We can talk, even though I still think there should be a third bathroom or a non-sexual, non-gender, I should say, bathroom. But as I said before, and this is coming from me, not Dave Coleman, my guest in the studio from the Coleman Legal Group, who is representing Yvette Comier in this Planet Fitness issue, transgender issue. My concern, again, from me, is that men are pigs. A lot of times we are pigs,
Disagree with that.
and there are men out there worse than others who will sit there and say, "Oh, I sincerely believe that I'm a woman," and they have no problem putting on a wig or a dress so they can hang out in the women's locker room all the time or in these schools,
Right.
albeit children. I mean, I know they wouldn't let adults necessarily into those. That's my concern, and the concern first comes to the safety
Right.
of these women in this case and children in the other case, and that's something that we need to be focused on.
Right, and that's really the third thing. You asked why our client is concerned with pursuing this issue, is women and children need to be protected here. You know, if you had a 14-year-old girl in this locker room and this man comes in and disrobes and starts taking a shower in front of a 14-year-old,
Right.
I mean, that's by definition child abuse. That's by definition a criminal act. It's not going to what you were just saying, that if there are people who really are sincerely feeling this way or living this way, there are other options, like having a third unisex facility or something like that, where you don't have to subject everyone else to their decision.
In fact, Shar Davenport is a professor at Saginaw Valley State University as well as Delta College. She's a prominent member of the transgender community, and she's also a transgender woman. She's also a transgender woman. She said Planet Fitness, another facility looking to support the transgender community, she supports that, but she insists they must have the proper facility so that supporting the LGBT rights doesn't impose on those who may not have a full understanding of her community. Quote, private showers and changing areas really would go a long way in resolving these issues, end quote. That's from the WNEW out of Midland, Michigan article about this.
But, you know, make no mistake here. Biology doesn't lie. DNA doesn't lie.
Well,
because somebody says, I sincerely believe I'm something or whatever, if they're still a man or if they're still a woman and you're going into those locker rooms, other people don't know that. Other people don't, you know, and they're being subjected to this. And then, like you say, other people are using it as a ruse to get into these, you know, could use it as a ruse to get into these places. So to have another option or another alternative, how somebody else chooses to live their life, that's their choice. But they should not be allowed to inflict that, and I'll use that word, inflict it, on somebody else who doesn't agree and who feels threatened by that
In fact,
for good reason.
in fact, you said the gentleman in this Planet Fitness issue you told me prior to the show actually asked, "Where should I go?"
Yes. Yeah. I mean, we're not suing him for
Right.
anything. He did nothing wrong in this instance. So.
You know, I hearken back to what you said a little bit ago about the example of a 14-year-old girl,
Mhm.
and then I thought about what I said right before that concerning if there's true gender issues and
Right.
and all that. Even if there was, and they hadn't had completed the surgery yet, a 14-year-old girl is going to be awfully embarrassed
Absolutely.
and maybe frightened.
Yes.
You listen to Live with Renk. My guest is David Coleman from the Coleman Legal Group out of the Lansing area. He is breaking news today on the Live with Renk show to discuss the fact that Yvette Cormier, the other centralized figure in this transgender Planet Fitness issue case, soon to be case, has retained him and his law group to represent her on this issue. I'm going to go to a quick break, come back on the other side. We'll get into the legal issues, and then I see you have a full board of phone calls. All ladies too. Thank you, Suzanne. Or maybe they self-identify as women. Suzanne, Dana, and Jane, stay on line. We will get to your phone calls. David said he's willing to take phone calls. You're listening to Live with Renk. We'll be right back. You're listening to Live with Renk show, and I do appreciate that. My guest in studio is David Coleman from the Coleman Legal Group from the Lansing area. Not only is he representing one of the centralized figures in this Planet Fitness transgender issue, which soon will become a case, he's a listener of mine, and I do appreciate him reaching out to me on the Live with Renk show. So you, my listeners in all my markets, are the first ones to hear this news. It's not been on any other media outlets yet. David, we're talking about, as I said, this whole Planet Fitness transgender issue from which originated in Midland, Michigan, made national news. Yvette Cormier was the female in the locker room who was eventually thrown. Her membership was revoked because she was concerned or complained to other members, and now she has retained your law firm to represent her. Quickly, what does he want to achieve from this, and what are the legal issues involved in this case?
Well, again, as I said earlier, there's a number of things, but to get to the legal case of why we're doing this, as I said earlier, the Planet Fitness, in our opinion, has violated the law in many respects by doing what they've done here.
Even though they're a private company.
Absolutely, because there are laws that apply to all of us, including private companies and private individuals. Non-discrimination laws, invasion of privacy issues, Consumer Protection Act issues, things like that apply to everybody. But let's be clear, this is not government action. This has got nothing to do with the state taking some action or doing anything. This is a private entity who obviously can make their own policies and requirements for membership and all that, but they must comply with the law. And so as we research some of these issues here, we found a number of ways in which they violated the law in what they've done here. For example, the Elliott Larson Civil Rights Act, which prohibits discrimination on a whole laundry list of reasons.
And that is an act passed in 1976 here in Michigan. It's just pertaining to Michigan.
Absolutely. So you cannot discriminate against anyone on the basis of sex. And then the statute defines sex to include sexual harassment. So without going into a lot of legal mumbo jumbo,
please don't.
Yeah, I don't want to do that. But bottom line, I think you could see how this could be construed as sexual harassment. Under these circumstances, this policy would allow it. So that's an aspect that we will be including in the lawsuit. Also, there's a section of the Elliott Larson Act that prohibits retaliation for trying to exercise your rights under that act. And of course, Planet Fitness clearly retaliated against our client by revoking her membership. Also, there's a tort for invasion of privacy. It's called intrusion of seclusion. You got to like that.
Yes.
But it means we all have the right to be let alone, or we have the right to privacy in certain areas and spheres. And so in a women's locker room, you're entitled to some privacy there as women and to not be subjected to members of the opposite sex. So that's an aspect. Also, obviously, breach of contract. I mean, I think clearly here when you read the contract, there's a breach there, so there's claims there.
Because there's nothing in the contract that states that they allow people who self-identify as the opposite sex to be in the locker room of the sex
Right.
they identify as.
Absolutely. And this needs to be clear for so folks understand this. There's nothing in the contract that lists this so-called non-judgmental policy that they talk about. It's something they've added. They have a general clause that talks about you will abide by our policies and rules and
Is
that
it
sort of thing.
posted anywhere? How
And
do
then it was
people?
not posted anywhere. There's nothing posted anywhere that my client saw at Planet Fitness that said transgender people are allowed to, men are allowed to use the women's locker room. It's
But
not
they
posted
said
anywhere.
that did they have something posted about the non-judgmental?
Not that my client saw, but
Okay.
that doesn't mean that it may not be posted somewhere.
Okay.
But I just find it ironic even using the phrase non-judgmental because clearly they're judging my client and
Right.
her reaction to this.
That's exactly
So
what
I
I
guess
said.
it's only a question of which side you're judging here on this matter. Also, I think Consumer Protection Act violations are a big one. You know, you can't use deceptive practices when you're providing services to the public. And so again, without getting into a lot of the legal minutia, I think you can see how we could raise some claims there. And there are aspects of Michigan's consumer protection law that we think have clearly been violated. So these are just some of the things that we're in the process of fine tuning in our complaint. And as I said, we plan on filing it soon.